Hello and welcome back to the series where I try to explain all the clans, also known as classes for people from other tabletops, inside Vampire the Masquerade, one by one in a way that it could be understood by a person that's not too involved with Vampire the Masquerade. Hopefully, I am trying my best. These videos are ad-libbed because I am really bad at writing down a script and following it or making any sort of presentation, which means that it tends to be focused on my thinky thoughts and the test of what I have read and what I have learned and what I can impart on you, which means that it might end up a bit rambly and a bit not perfect. Today we are talking about Gangrel, which is a vampire group that's a bit like a druid, a bit like a wild animal, a bit like a furry, that sort of thing, but it's like a grouping of a vampire. Because how vampires work in Vampire the Masquerade is that there's different groups of vampire and they pass down the qualities that they have to the vampires that they make into a vampire. So effectively, if I have a set of abilities and I buy you, you have a set of the same abilities, except for like certain points where accidents happen and then you have a new offshoot, and this can be like a bloodline or like a subclass, or it can even become like a full-fledged class over time. They kind of just like wibble wobble, they twist and change depending on the additions. So something that wasn't a class can become elevated to a class, and something that was a class can get brought down to not being a class, or it can be changed to like a whole bunch of classes got kind of bunched up into one, and there's normally like lore explanations for that, but it's that sort of thing. But for general knowledge, if I'm a vampire and I'm a specific type of vampire and I bite you and you become a vampire, you're gonna be of the same type of vampire, and that's how these things work. So with Gangrel, there isn't a lot of very in-depth lore, mostly because this is a class of wild people. Like, if your furry friend had the full right to express themselves however they want and they ran off into a forest and maybe ate a couple of people, that's the sort of thing that the Gangrel are. Their main abilities, same for V20 edition, V5 edition, which is the most played editions. V5's the newest, but people kind of don't super like it. V20 is the one that came before. There's also V1, V2, V3, but people don't really play those as much. So we're just talking about the most popular editions, and their abilities in both of these editions, they're kind of the same. You have animalism. This allows you to talk to animals. This allows you to grow claws. This allows you to turn into animal. All that good shit, right? You have fortitude, which is thing don't hurt if thing hit ya, aka your skin is thicker than normal. And you have protean, which is punch hard. A lot of Gangrel are both strong and intelligent. Like, they rely quite a lot of like their physical attributes and strengths, especially with the whole animalistic compound. But at the same time, they tend to be loners, survivors, hunters. The regular way of operation before the 21st century often involved following nomadic tribes around, hunting people that kind of fell to the wayside. They like their, predator and prey sort of aspect. They like their being a wolf sort of aspect that requires cunning, skill, and survival. In fact, unlike the previous video where I told you that Bruja, they really take and make new vampires on a whim, and by the way, if you haven't seen that video, you can. It exists. Just like Google Mirta 00 Bruja or something. Alternatively, I can probably link it in the description down below, but I don't know if I remember to do that or not. So, that exists. Unlike those, they're very particular with the kind of people that they take in and they turn into a vampire. Mostly in the sense that they choose people that are with this survivalist spirit, that are adaptable, that are likely to wander the wilds, that are likely to try and fight back and resist, and are quick-witted and quick to think on their feet, because it's something that they're gonna require. Gangrel are often shunned by other vampire clans, or at least they were historically. They were considered a low clan in the Dark Ages. The high clans were like the noble clans and respectable, your lords and ladies, and the low clans were like your peasants and your rabble and that sort of thing. Mostly because Gangrel don't super participate with the society. Very few Gangrel will like stay in a city and take up a position and go and push some papers around. A lot of them like wandering, a lot of them like traveling, a lot of them like even risk taking and just testing their force and their might against something that there is to test themselves against. So a lot of Gangrel's leaders, a lot of them are like what would be considered human chiefs and adventurers and even prisoners if they're super good at like surviving the prison and escaping it. That's like prime Gangrel target. So it's that kind of loner sort of thing. It's not a societal thing. It's not like I sit in the city and look at my desk and my papers. That's precisely the kind of thing that Gangrel don't like doing. So considering that they were like wandering for a lot of the time, and because of that, there isn't like a lot of history that got created. It's just that it got harder and harder for them when it entered modern days, to a point where some of them have left to join what's left out of like smaller hunter tribes inside like the Amazonian forests. Some of them had to like become more like biker type people. Either way, they don't tend to like to settle down. They don't tend to like to stay in one specific city. It's a lot rare for Gangrel to just live amongst society, and their bane that they suffer is one of the reasons why. Not only their whole demeanor and the kind of, well, people that they are, their bane is that every single time when they frenzy, and frenzying is when your vampire is very hungry, very scared, or in a fight and flight situation, they have a chance to enter a frenzy where they lose control of their body. Normally, storyteller will be like, roll for frenzy, and if you win, you can still control your vampire. If you lose, then if they're hungry, they're gonna attack the first target that looks yummy next to them automatically. If something's scary happening in front of them, they're gonna run away, or they're gonna attack and fight without like any input from you. So anytime that happens, Gangrel take on an animal characteristic or appearance feature. So suddenly they can just sprout bunny ears, for all you know, which is not very compatible with like living in a city among like normal human beings. It's kind of hard to walk around when suddenly you have a tail swooshing around, or you just sprouted bunny ears or developed a shell. Welcome to the world, snail, I guess. Or your skin turned into pattern, or you suddenly developed a very animalistic quirk that is more social than physical. Like you just have a specific wish to go caw everywhere at all times, which would probably be very annoying for everyone else. But point being is you don't appear normal. You don't behave and blend in very well when that happens. And over time, some for some gangrel, those kind of features, they can start sticking around permanently, which makes it even harder. Therefore, the more wild and animalistic type of living just suited them a lot better. But as civilization encroached and we got closer to the 21st century, there was less and less forest land, and what is in forest land over there can get taken over by werewolves, and you kind of don't want to be competing with werewolves, so life became kind of hard if you're a gangrel, which is one of the reasons why they embrace very hardy people, very survivalist people, people that can quickly think on their feet no matter where they come from normally in life. And with these kind of things, you can roleplay and you can break the stereotype if you want. You can always be like, I am a gangrel, but I am trying to stick to my office job that I had before I got embraced. Like, imagine you just had a 9 to 5 and you're like, boss, can I switch to night shift? And you're like, I don't know, working in finances or something. So now every single night you just kind of wake up to head to the office or log on to your computer going, no, I got attacked by a weird wolf man, but I still gotta do my taxes and I still gotta. You can role play it like that if you want, but you'll have to deal with all of those animalistic features, and you have to deal with what it's gonna do to you societally. It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be a lot harder than being embraced and caught by any other sort of vampire group that might have an easier time blending in. V5 also adds compulsions. It is what you do when you critically botch, I believe, when you really, really fail a roll. And compulsion of Gangrel is to act like an animal, and you can only speak in one word sentences until the end of the scene, which makes it even harder to be normal if that is your goal. Hence why the stereotype is what it is, because it's just easier to play it. It's a very strict clan when it comes to that, just because of how it is organized. Now, the fact that Gangrel have a struggle of like having any kind of notable achievements in history because they were so nomadic, it doesn't mean that they don't have a culture. They do have a culture. Their culture really relies on testing the hardiness of their own people. So, for example, any new person that got turned into a vampire, if they got turned by a gangrel, and gangrel don't turn at random. Like, it's a very specific choosing process. Like, they really must be very interested in that person, of going, that is a very hardy person, would really fit our clan right over there. Or they have to, like, really hate you, and you have to kind of impress them in order for them to even like give a shit to this degree. So maybe like you were a vampire hunter and you were a nemesis to a gangrel, and then you got hate embraced because that happens. But if you impress them and you didn't get hate embraced, what they will do is actually they will just like leave you alone to, for one thing, see if you can even figure out that you're a vampire and survive starting from there. It's kind of a test. And then if you last a couple of days, it's all right. If you last like 3 months, they might even take you on and then teach you another gangrel, not necessarily the one that even made you into a vampire, might come along and be like, okay, I see that you're managing. I can show you the ropes. So there's tradition in that. If you got hate embraced because you were a hunter and they thought, wouldn't it be funny if I crippled you on purpose and then made you into a vampire? Because the defect that I left you with will stay. Actually, it would be even funnier if, like, you chose an appearance-based defect. I know that this isn't gonna be very useful because Gangrel don't tend to have great appearance stats anyway because of, the whole animal thing. But like, imagine somebody has like a full beard, and you're like, okay, you're a hunter. I hate you. You've been like a real pain in my ass. I want to really show you. So you just kind of shave half of their beard. Like one side shaved, one side not, and then you make them into a vampire because they freeze exactly as they are. So there have been like tales of vampires with like a broken jaw. There's, I believe, like one in Redemption, Vampire the Masquerade Redemption, the video game, and I think like her jaw like is really fucked up from this line. That's something that they would do, but like you could also like break their arms, leave them with higher control of like harder control of their arms, because that's gonna be hard to live with for the rest of your own life. It's not gonna hurt because you're a corpse now, but it's not gonna stick in the right direction and therefore not be a very useful limb. So, like, you see how it can be a punishment. They're the kind of clan where if you're really, really pissed them off, they will do that. They will, like, hate turn you into a gangrel, and they will stack your whole environment against you so that it is as likely as possible that you just experience the horror of becoming undead and then you die. Because, well, then you can't hurt them back, right? So maybe they will just drop you in a room full of windows with the curtains open. Maybe they will just like drop you off to your hunter buddies and they will be like, ah, he's a vampire now, stab, that sort of thing. And then if you kind of survive that, there's still a bit of a stigma against you and the your gangrel community because they can tell that you were a hate embrace and not just like a person that was of note and like super survivalist and didn't have like super good accomplishments. If Steve Irving was to be a vampire, Gangrels would have probably taken him because he was super into animals and he did a lot of traveling and adventuring, and that would have been impressive for a person. Most people don't do that. And compare that to like some schmuck that really pissed you off for so considerable amount of time in your own life that you were like, that's it, I'm hate embracing you. So that's the thing. Gangrels will normally gather from time to time, mostly just to boast and partake in a party kind of mood rather than do anything useful. So if somebody like summons a gathering, it will mostly be local. They will be mostly summoning like weeks ahead of time at least, if not months, because it will take time to spread the message to the corners of the earth because all the gangrel are wandering and they're never practically in the same spot. They will do a lot of rites to do with wrestling or fighting one another to prove supremacy over each other. It's kind of like a wolf thing. It's kind of like asserting who's the top dog. That sort of thing. It's the kind of thing that cats do. Well, so do Gangrel. And that's in their culture. So they do have a culture. It's just that they don't have any particular accomplishments, buildings built, or anything in that regard because they're just not that interested in civilization in general. And that doesn't mean that your gangrel doesn't have to be interested in the civilization. That's just how the clan be. There are some varieties to the clan. But before we're gonna get to varieties of the clan, I have to explain the structure a little bit. So, normally in Vampire the Masquerade, there are like 3 big sects. And sects are like groupings of vampire. It's like their political affiliation, if you will. Camarilla is the structured sect. It is, we have a leader, normally like leaders at the top, and then every like country or bigger area has like a leader, like a prince, and he has like a group of advisors, and everybody like falls below them in nicely stacked piles. We try to make sure that our vampire activity is not super noticeable by all the humans, all the mortals, because then hunters come and that's not very good. And also, we control the vampire population. Sometimes the prince will be asking for like tithes to be paid, like, bring me that much blood every week for the privilege of living in my domain, that sort of thing. But anyway, there's a rulership, and then there's like a power structure beneath it. And if you're at any point in that ladder, you kind of have to get permission for big movements. So if you wanted to make somebody else into a vampire, you would need to ask the princess permission for doing so. There's structure. That is the Camarilla thing. Anarchs are like, fuck the popo, we're free, this is free living, this is free state sort of people, but that also doesn't work, so they do also sort of have a structure. They have barons. Barons oversee territories that are normally kind of smaller than what princes oversee, that way you can have more barons. Anarchs tend to be younger, they tend to also be people that kind of want power for themselves and they're not too happy with the current power structure. So like if you really wanted to be a prince, that's unlikely to happen. You could probably become a baron, that would probably be easier. The baronhood might only extend like 9 streets, for example. Like it could be fairly small amount of room, but you're like, this is my barony, like this tiny like little ass village, this is my barony, and that's somebody else's barony. And in that situation, they also don't want to be noticed by mortals. They're still kind of careful with their actions, but it's a lot looser. So if you wanted to make a vampire, you would make a vampire and then introduce it to the Baron, going, hey, I made Bill. This is Bill, he's living by our rules now, this is, he's in this whole our thing. Bill now. So if something happens because Bill does something stupid, that's on me, and that's on Bill later on when he figures out what the hell he's doing. Then there's the Sabbat, which is the more feral vampires, the ones that they're unapologetically vampire. And they can get pretty heinous. Like making cathedrals of bones and houses of flesh level heinous. And they're very visible to everybody. They want to rule rightfully as vampires because they believe that they should. They believe that mortals should fall in line. They don't see a reason to hide any of that. Their society is a lot more religious and tends to run on rites, and they have priests that instruct pacts, and that's how they organize. They tend to have very like strict structure of like, hey, we throw a party every month. It is this very specific thing that we do during that party. This is the rites that we partake in. This is the kind of rites that you have to pass in order to even be here. And they're also very warrior-like. They don't like older vampires. They don't like the vampires that started all of the clans to begin with because they believe that they're gonna wake up and eat all of their children. And this is not entirely baseless belief, by the way. It's just a thing that can happen in the lore. So they do try and exterminate older, very old vampires by force. If they can, they will eat them because that makes them more powerful. You kind of absorb the power of the vampire, which for the rest of the vampire society is very big of a no-no. So they're the feral vampires. Now, Gangrel, they kind of start as one of the founding clans of the Camarilla, which is like the structured structure. But even by V20, they're not really cool with it. They're mostly out. And a lot of them are not part of any kind of clan. They're just independent. Because you can be that. You can be an independent vampire that's like not part of a sect. That's fine. They're still part of a clan. I misspoke. The clan is the Gangrel bit, right? But they don't have to be like part of a sect. So they can be like, we're not with any of you guys officially. But smaller amount of Gangrel can maybe have like an agreement and still like be part of a domain inside the Camarilla. Some of them might be part of Anarch movement. Some of them might be in Sabbat. That's fine. But officially, the clan is just not affiliated with anything. When we come to V5, officially the clan is sorta affiliated with the Anarchs, but a large part of the clan highly independent. Because it is kind of a clan of like wanderers and loners, and it's not the kind of clan that would have a lot of organization. And we're now gonna talk about like the offshoots, the subclasses, the subgroups, the bloodlines of the clans, because those exist. So first are the Greek Gangrel. They are the Gangrel that, beginning in the Dark Ages, were hiding in the cities of man. And because they're hiding in cities of man, they're more exposed to people. And you know the whole animal thing? Not great at keeping you secret that you're not a supernatural being. It's very hard to introduce yourself as a completely normal human being when you start sprouting whiskers. You know, that's a problem. That's a problem. So they're mostly differentiated by the fact that instead of fortitude, which is the thing that protects you, that makes your skin thick and harder to damage, they have obfuscate, which is I can go invisible, yo. It's your invisible ability. That's the kind of, because they're living in a town, they're living in a city, they need to adapt, they're sneaking around, and because they have animism and they're so close to being able to turn themselves like into an animal and having a lot of animal features, Gangrel blood apparently is highly mutable, so it's easy for them to exchange the whole thick skin for you can't see me. And they're very friendly with Nosferatu, which is a different clan, and it's a clan that a lot of the time like take areas inside the sewers, and they kind of use the sewers to get around together with the Nosferatu because, well, they live in the cities now. When it comes to the modern days, mostly only Sabbat has different offshoots for Gangrel. And I say mostly because officially these offshoots are affiliated with the Sabbat, and I already explained to you what the Sabbat are, so hopefully you remember. It is city Gangrel and country Gangrel. So city Gangrel are once again Gangrel living in the cities, and they're kind of described like coyotes of, well, they're suited for wilderness life, but they adapted. And as such, they drop even more abilities. Instead of having animism, which is your ability to animism, pretty sure it's animalism. There we go. Thank you, brain. Instead of having animalism, they now have celerity, which is gotta go fast. They still have obfuscate, which is me go invisible, and they have protein, which is I hit hard. And then you have the country Gangrel, which have all the normal features of Gangrel, like animalism, fortitude, and protein, which is I talk with animals, I can turn into animal, my skin is thick, so I'm hard to hurt, and I can hit hard. I can hit really hard, but they kind of now move in packs. They love hunting, they love traveling between cities. It's like this wild, imagine a wild biker gang, but sometimes they turn into wolves and run through forests, I guess. And also, if anyone like finds them, they're very bloodthirsty and they don't mind pummeling people to death. And then you have what country Gangrel effectively is for the Sabbat, which is Gangrel in the country, but very wild and dangerous. And if you want to get weird, It's not something that you will ever play because that would be very hard to play. And lore-wise, there's only like, what, 20 of them? It is the Mariner Gangrel, which is Gangrel, but they live underwater for the sheer reason that they can. You don't need to breathe because you're a corpse. Sunshine don't shine that deep down. Sure, you can't speak, but you can probably like show directions and do body movements, and that's pretty good enough. The only issue is that Gangrel, from all the frenzying, take on animalistic qualities over time. Well, if you get very stubborn to live in a lake and you decide to like drink the blood of fishes and octopi and sharks, the kind of animal characteristics that you're gonna take on will be from the animals that are in your area, which means that Mariner Gangrel look like a crossbreed between the person, the fish, and like a squid thing. They over time really look nothing like people on the surface, so they kind of can't walk on the surface anymore. Like, you wouldn't want to take your fish face up there, so they stay in their lake, and hence why they're not a very playable variant. You just get to know that they exist because that's a cool bit of trivia, I guess. Like, if you wanna be weird, you can with Gangrel. That's completely normal. So, I hope that I broke it down well enough for you. People that tend to play Gangrel tend to like playing Druid, are furry, or like animals, or make a character that really is into animals, or like the loner stereotype, but it's more like that they like playing a druid or a furry. Those two would definitely fall more into I want to roleplay a vampire that randomly gets animal qualities and some of them stick around. That's kind of their thing. Nothing wrong if you like Gangrel. I kind of like playing them sometimes myself. I have nothing against Gangrel, but it's a clan, and that's what it is. Hopefully, that makes it very clear to you about what is Gangrel. If you like this series, I have more videos coming out from this series for the rest of the clans, because so far I've done 2, and there's definitely more clans than just 2. Hopefully they're easy to follow and watch. If you have any questions, put them down in the comment section down below. If you have an opinion on Gangrel, put it down in the comment section down below. We can share opinions on Gangrel, because why not? So thank you for watching. Hopefully you're gonna watch my other videos too. And actually, if you're considering subscribing, just like take a look around the rest of my channel, because I do gaming videos. I talk about occult, and the tabletop is kind of a thing that I do rarer, but my content sort of revolves around Vampire the Masquerade, so it's not entirely out of the left field. So it's not that it doesn't fit, it's just that the channel is kind of more gameplay oriented, and then everything else kind of falls in the core categories around. It's a whole mix of things. If you like a whole mix of things, maybe you'll like it. But if you don't, then I think you would see a lot of videos on your feed that you're not into, and nobody should be subjected to that. So yeah, but if you do subscribe, I would really appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Thank you to my Patreon subscribers for supporting me and allowing me to ramble on into my camera. And I hope I'm gonna see you in the next one. Bye, bye.